Alright, welcome to the Artanis guide. This guide will be focusing on a build for Artanis that focuses more on aggression and putting pressure on the Zerg enemy heroes. I'll put a simplified build order in the description in case you just want to read through something real quick as you're getting into a game, but for a slightly more in-depth guide we'll go into it here. So with this build you're going to be working towards draining their resources, which could be their minerals, their gas, or their attention, and the attention's the big one. If you are getting a single Zerg enemy hero to focus on you, that means the other Zerg hero has 7 people to focus on. So that means that 7 of your teammates have a much easier game, and on top of that, the Zerg have a much harder time finding your eco because they only have 1 player actively looking. So this is a very good solo strategy and a very good team play strategy. So to start off with, you're going to want to place a Nexus, a Cyber Core, a Pylon of course, and a Warp Gate. Now there are a few reasons you may want to differ from this build order, and it depends on which heroes the enemy picks. If the enemy Zerg picks Dahaka, you want to consider opening with 2 Adepts instead of a Stalker. Dahaka's dash and his movement speed allows him to get on top of his Stalker and pick it off fairly easily. However, you also want to keep a Nexus around. Versus most Zerg heroes, you'll salvage the Nexus early on, after you get your first Mothership core to get extra minerals, to get your first assimilator faster. Versus Dahaka, you want to keep it around. For this reason, it is still viable to open with Stalker, but it means you have to be willing to recall. If the enemy picks Brack as their Zerg hunter, you have to keep your Nexus around, just like you do versus Dahaka. And this is because Brack is a very big threat to Artanis early on, bigger than a Dahaka is. Brack can swap on top of you from off screen and get his extra movement speed. But on top of that, if he starts with his cloud, he can put it on you and drain your energy from 100 to 0 very fast. So often what happens is you need to instantly recall when you see a Brack go for this. As long as you play safe, you will be able to outscale his abilities fairly well into the late game. If the enemy picks Glevig, that is the only hard counter to this strategy that I'm going to be showcasing. Glevig is a very powerful defender when it comes to killing enemy heroes that are pushing throughout the entire game due to the bile ability. So it hard counters the Artanis push. You will have to transition into more of a base oriented playstyle or an all sides push with Stalkers and Immortals warping in all around the map. The start is still the same, you just can't harass the Zerg creep as much, or the defender. You can still harass the hunter. Now on Artanis, you start farming your gas a bit later than other classes because you need to wait for your minerals to make your Cybercore and your Stalker. So you can take this time at the start of the game, since you're in no rush to get these things out. As we're seeing here, you can look around, see where your team's going and go in an opposite direction of them. Also use your speed aura to help them get out of the base faster. Not so much yourself, but helping your teammates get to their eco a little bit faster is nice. And then we find somewhere to place our eco. And we're looking at the left side of the map because our team won't be farming the left side. They'll be farming the right side, the top side, and the bot side. So we can go from this eco spot to mid left. When it comes to Artanis' starting eco, you can put it pretty much anywhere, whether it be corners or corridor ecos. It's up to you. I'd suggest starting out with corridor ecos if you're not too familiar with corners though. And we see it's a Kerrigan and a Neadra, so we're going to start off with a standard opener, 1 Stalker, and then we will be getting ready to salvage our Nexus after we get a single MS core. Make sure to salvage the Cyber Core at 87 minerals so you can get the Stalker out faster. This way you can place your Nexus faster and get to mid. So when you're versing a hero like Kerrigan, it's okay to speed aura towards mid. Again, with Brack and Dahaka, you want to be a little more careful. And we have our MS core out, so now we're going to salvage the Nexus. And that way we're already 23 minerals closer to an assimilator. Doesn't sound like a lot. 22 minerals, sorry. Doesn't sound like a lot, but it speeds things up a lot. It snowballs your eco so much faster. So now we just farm our lings. And pretty much until we hit level 2, we need the Stalker. After we hit level 2, we can still farm our lings quite easily with a level 2 Artanis because he 2-shots the lings. It's worth noting, if you do lose your Stalker or your Adepts, you don't need to remake them if you hit level 2. But in this case, obviously, it's much better to try and keep it alive, so do your best to do so. And while we're here, we'll talk about the upgrade order for Artanis' skills, his auras. So for a pushing build, which this build is oriented towards, you want to start out with Energizer Aura, because you have to of course. and then go into Endurance Aura, and then a second level of Energizer Aura, and then from there you max out Endurance, then Energizer, and then Radiance. For a basing build, you start Energizer Aura, then go Endurance Aura, and then 2 levels of Radiance Aura, and then you focus on maxing out Radiance into Endurance and then Energizer. Now you're just going to want to keep building up your assimilator count until you have 6 assimilators, at which point I suggest banking 280 minerals and salvaging those 6 assimilators to get a Mothership. This way you can get a much safer eco, even though it's slower. You don't risk the chance of a Zerg dashing into your eco that's got 0 vision and really low health. Artanis' assimilators are very squishy, so I find this is a really good way at reliable income. And after that, once you have your Mothership, you can start making more assimilators underneath the Mothership. So at this point we have our Mothership, and we've got our Mothership core. We're going to start building assimilators underneath the Mothership for very safe economy. We're going to be able to cloak it and be able to see Zerg heroes anywhere within the area and preemptively salvage their eco, so it's very safe and reliable now. So now we just want to mass assimilators, spending any gas we get and putting them into assimilators, and constantly doing that until we're about roughly plus 30 to plus 40 minerals per second. And at that point, we can start going into a little bit of aggression, which will get us more gas income, and we'll start putting on the pressure to the Zerg. Now sometimes you want to get upgrades before you hit that plus 30 mark, and that's okay. Sometimes you need an early armor upgrade. Sometimes maybe you're very gas starved to get early Stalkers and you might want early blink for a bit of creep push. But the rule of thumb, get to plus 30, plus 40, somewhere in that range before you start doing a push or before you start harassing Hunter. So now we're here, we've spent all our gas and we're starting to float minerals. We're at plus 21 per second, but there's no point in us floating those minerals for nothing. So we get a forge and we get our 1 armor, and we get a cyber core, and we can use Stalkers to start helping farm gas again. Then we go back into building up our assimilators, maybe at this point getting an extra eco spot as well, or at least preparing for one with a Nexus. And now, since we're nearing that plus 30 area, we may as well start talking about the upgrades. For upgrades, we're going to want to get plus 1 armor during the assimilator phase, the point in which we're building up our eco. You just get that whenever you start floating minerals basically. Same for 1 attack. And then the Stalkers come out roughly once you're 1-1, and then you want to get blink for them. This way you can keep them alive and not feed gas, as well as keep your resources alive on the map, your Stalkers. Then from there, if you ever start floating 3k minerals or anything close to that, go for 2 armor. And then after you get your 2 armor, you want to get 2 attack, and now you should be at the point, hopefully, where around plus 70 minerals. Plus 70 minerals per second is pretty much when you want to cut most of your eco and go for a fight against the Zerg, whether it be the Hunter, the Defender, their creep, their base. Once you do this, you want to get both of the Immortal upgrades. Neither one is necessarily better than the other, you usually want to get them both around the same time. After this point, you have your optional upgrades. The gateway warp-in extra charge on it is quite useful. It means you need less gateways. You can get 2 charges. It's quite nice and it's cheap. Your 3 armor, it's nice, but it's extremely expensive, and usually the game is decided before you're able to get 3 armor with this build. If you can get to 10k minerals though, then go for 3 armor. And of course after that comes 3 attack. Much less useful than 3 armor, but it's still nice. If you get to a base stage and you've got maxed out Immortals and maxed out upgrades, you can then start thinking about getting some Reavers, and of course both of their upgrades are good as well. Immortals for their cost are far better than Reavers in almost any scenario, so usually you want to be focusing on maxing out upgrades and your Immortal count before you start going for the Reavers. The Adept Glaives, the Resonating Glaives, there's not much point going for them. The Adept attack speed, in this build, you pretty much never build Adepts except maybe 2 when you're versing Dahaka. So now we're securing an extra eco around the map. We're getting some Stalkers out so we can assist our hero in farming gas, just putting down some Adepts, not because they're going to be useful, they're pretty much there just to block link attacks so the actual useful unit, the Stalker, can kill them, instead of them running into the gateways. Now we're going on to creep. So now we're going to want to start looking at getting blink for our Stalkers, and that way we can keep them alive if Neandra comes for us. Nice thing about Neandra is we can see where she is. She can't teleport on top of us, so it's a lot safer than something like a Zagara. So we just keep pushing, getting a little bit of gas, pushing back the Zerg's creep. Meanwhile, we're building up our assimilators in the background anytime we get enough gas. There we go, blink out, save our minerals, and avoid feeding them gas. Auras are a very big part of this build, as we see there. We use the speed aura to get out. That's why we focus on the defensive aura and the speed aura. The attack aura is really nice, but we don't have enough energy to get away with it. You can only have enough energy for 2 auras at a time, so having a third aura is often useless. You're better off just maxing one of the 3, or 2 of the 3 rather. And when we're pushing on creep, we want the speed aura to make sure we can get out if we need to. The defensive aura to make sure we can tank shots. It's an insanely strong aura. And then if we really need to, we've got the 50 energy for a recall. There's no room for the attack aura when you're pushing on creep. In base, there's not much room for the speed aura, so you usually go for defense and attack. Now we're just poking in and off a creep, trying to pick up a few tumors. The gas is nice. We're trying to take up the defender's attention and slowly push them back to their mid spot. Of course, if you don't have anyone on your team pushing a defender, they'll usually just creep the map if they're decent. So it's nice to be able to fill that role yourself without having to commit everything to it. And that's part of what's strong about this build, is because of the blink Stalkers, you're not committing an insane amount of minerals, because the goal is to always keep those minerals around. The goal is to never lose them until a big push. And while we're doing this, we just keep building. Assimilators, obviously the by far most efficient, so you want to be going for that primarily. But if you ever find yourself running out of the APM to keep building assimilators, it's okay to get a few motherships. If you don't have a place set up, it's okay to get a mothership or 2 in the corners. But ideally, you can just keep setting up assimilators, because it will speed up your build so much faster. So definitely focus on trying to do that. Unfortunately, I didn't have a mothership there, so I didn't get to see Zerg coming to my eco before she reached it. It's one of the big things about having a mothership, not just the cloak. So a bit unfortunate there. Maybe I could have been a little bit less greedy and gone for a mothership instead of pure assimilators. But it's okay, I salvaged most of it. Now we just go for a mothership down here to set up a new eco spot with our mothership core. Meanwhile, we're still pushing back creep, still getting a bit of gas. Sadly they see that, but that's alright. Our income's decent anyway. Nice thing about Artanis is you don't need a whole lot. Like I've mentioned earlier, our end goal is basically plus 70 minerals per second, at which point we can do a full-on push towards them. Recall our mothership and our mothership core there, and then just build a new eco, no problem. Still harassing creep pretty much any time after we hit that plus 30 minerals per second point, or really after we started making Stalkers and got the blink for them. Pretty much always want to be either on creep or on the Zerg hunter. So now we're trying to find another angle to get around to the creep, put down a Nexus just in case. It's a backup eco basically, a backup potential eco spot. Nexus are very cheap and give you really safe options for setting up a base. It's like putting down an SCV. So here we've got Neandra running on top of us. We just blink onto the high ground. Lose a couple of Stalkers is my bad, but it's pretty easy to get away with everything. A really easy way and fast way to micro Stalkers is to move command them towards a cliff, then shift blink command them up, and shift move command them away. This way they'll all, as they get close to the cliff, blink up and immediately run away so they don't block the other Stalkers trying to get up. Now that we've got pretty good income, 63, soon to be like maybe 66 minerals per second, we've got this group of warp gates over here. Warp gates become very, very important once you hit this point. It's very easy to run out of warp in charges, even when you have the upgrade. If the Zerg comes to hit this, then I don't have many warp gates around the map. So it is nice, maybe once you start getting around the 40 minerals per second mark, start making a few warp gates with your other cloaked ecos, just for safety. So now that we're around plus 70 minerals per second, we're going to start making a huge army. Pretty much all of our resources are going to go into army here. Very few are going to go into economy. We're going to want to start banking gas and going for Immortals. Immortals are going to be the huge thing for us. So I've made a few more Stalkers, mostly just to get a bit more gas. Make sure we get that. Blink up here. Get the spine was what I was trying to do. A little bit of creep, but Kerrigan happened to TP there as well. And it's okay. If you're pushing creep, you're also trying to distract the defender. But distracting the hunter works just as well. The goal is basically to distract one of the Zerg heroes. We try and keep our Stalkers out of danger. Our heroes in no danger at all. Just try to not feed that gas from those Stalkers, as well as not lose them. Obviously not a great job here. But as we're warping in our Immortals, we're going to start having a huge amount of single target damage. And they're not bad at clearing lings either, especially when in a ball like this. But as we saw just before, if Kerrigan gets close, we just start melting her. So that's what we're going to be going for now. Try and max out on Immortals, and right click Kerrigan if she gets close. Defensive aura anytime we need it. It's going to be huge. In this scenario, a attack aura is nice because we're versus the hunter, but this build is more catered towards expecting to be fighting the defender and being on creep. So in this scenario, it's nice to have defense and attack, and that's why it's nice in a base. But this is like the kind of backup plan. If hunter comes to us, we kind of have to accept that we're fighting them because they can just chase us off creep, and that's fine. So we're losing a lot of units here, but we are doing damage. We're draining their resources as well. They get gas from killing our units, but what's important is they don't get minerals from killing our units. So as they spawn these units, they run out of a lot of their minerals and have a hard time reproducing the units that have just died. And now you can do, often this is what I do when a Zerg hunter is chasing me. I pretty much just make a base at one of my ecos, or in this case warp gates, and try to reduce as much surface area as possible. Try to get in corridors, in corners, something like this. Use pylons and warp gates to reduce that surface area even more, so they have to actively destroy them. Meanwhile, you're just targeting the hero, and it's fine here. We've got enough minerals to use our mothership as vision. Just spamming more warp gates because we need those warp-ins, those charges. And now this is really hard for Zerg to walk into because that is a huge amount of dense damage on that high ground. As you see, they're trying to walk up. They can't get lings to surround them. Hydras are the best unit versus this build, and even they are having a lot of trouble, even with the Zerg hero, even without auras. And then as we see, the defensive aura comes in and things start taking barely any damage. It's huge. We're also level 9 here, so we start getting our attack aura as well. Oh sorry, we were level 10, we're level 11 now. So we start getting our attack aura as well. Levels are massive on Artanis for this build. The auras are a key part. Now if Neadra walks close, we start hitting her, just right click her. If she walks away, we back off and kill their units instead. Since we've got both Zerg heroes here, we have to play it very slow, slowly push them. We don't need to rush anything because meanwhile the two Zerg heroes are spending all of their attention on trying to deal with us. The rest of our team can just get away with whatever they're doing. So as long as we just hold out, don't die, but keep up pretty much what we're doing, we win this. If they back off, we push into the creep and go for their base. If they push into us, we start targeting the hero and killing them. So this is a great position to be in. With the warp-ins, we just spawn it on top of them. Units don't automatically target something that's warping in. It's got no attack priority, so it can make things really annoying for them, especially if there's units behind the warping in target. Auras do work on different cliff levels, so we can just stay on the slow ground cliff, and if they walk up to our units on the high ground, we just stand on the low ground and activate it. In this case, she goes to the low ground, so we try to keep our hero safe. It is a bit risky, but we're slowly whittling them down. Especially useful when we have an elementals like this, or anything that can pretty much soak up these levels in this gas. In this scenario, we've bought all this time, and we've pretty much got both heroes on us. If your team isn't doing anything, just try and remind them to push. They can get away with a lot when they're pushing because the Zerg has to focus on us. and we're completely safe. It sucks if we do have to recall because it reveals one of our ecos, but if need be, we can recall to one of the Nexuses on the map. We can do it with our hero, or we can do it with our motherships. If we stood our hero under the mothership, it would take us with it, so it's very safe for us. Now we just run to our team, no problem. We've done our damage, bought our team time, still have good income, and now we just pretty much go down to our teammates to make up an army on top of them. And once we get a maxed out army of Immortals again, unless they have like maxed out economy with like a Megalith and Banelings, they're not realistically going to push into it, not when they have 28k HP. And of course they're not likely to have that economy because they spend so much minerals on trying to deal with our army. So this is a little bit further into the game where we managed to get bot right. We got to the Alarak. Unfortunately he died. Fortunately it did stop us from lagging because it was very laggy to watch through it all, so we skipped towards this. But now we've pretty much built up our army, and again we're getting in a really tight spot that's hard to push into. If they choose to push, they need their hero, and if they use their hero, they lose health. In this particular scenario, we can just play it safe and sit back because we have an Elementalist. We can just let him scale. Otherwise we will be poking in and out of creep and slowly taking them out that way. And here we go doing that. We slowly push into creep. Nothing too extreme. We can always recall. I've got enough income. I should have a mothership on top of me here. Once you get rich enough, you can have a mothership on top of your push. Gives you vision. Gives you pretty much a free recall because you don't need to use it from your hero. You don't need to use up one of your aura slots, keeping that 50 energy around as well, along with the cooldown. But now we just push into the enemy Zerg. And this is pretty much where all the power comes from. It's the ball of Immortals paired with the auras. And slowly we push through them. Unfortunately Elementals dies there, but we just back off. Or if the Zerg want to follow us, I mean we're level 13 at this point. Yeah, at this point we've got enough damage. We can just walk up to them. So that's an example of the base. Another example, that one was more so where the hunter came to attack us and kept up the attack, and we just fought back. This one would be more of an example of how a full push works out when the hunter doesn't stay on you and they kind of try to back off. So at this point we're in a similar spot where we've just done our pushing, we were mid, now the hunter has come after us and we're falling back to a choke where we can make Immortals in a multi-cliff level area that's really hard to push into. And what we do here is farm levels, farm gas, build up our Immortal count, all while draining their resources. Now in this scenario, Zerg doesn't push as hard into us. They kind of back off, they send their units, they don't want to take all that damage, and then kind of let us do our thing. So for now we just build up our Immortals, as we did in the other game. We're at plus 70, all our resources go towards Immortals, but then they try and run away. So instead of pushing into us, they're running. So what do? We just run mid instead. Now I set up a Nexus for us to recall back to. I should realistically be making a mothership to go with me as well. Although maybe I don't have enough eco in this one. But definitely a mothership to cloak the Nexus. That way I have a safe place to recall back to that's not at an eco spot already. Something I didn't showcase in the other one, I don't think, is that you should be making pylons on the creep as you're pushing. That way you can warp on creep. Don't make one pylon, they'll always just snipe the pylon. Make like 3 or 4 pylons in the same spot and use that to warp in. And that way you don't have to warp in behind you to get units coming up to follow you. As we see here, bringing in the mothership for vision. If they go for a snipe on the mothership, it should be fine because I just turn around and attack them. This case, not so much because my army is nowhere near it. But that's okay because, you know, while they're focused on the mothership, I'm taking out all of their eco and all of their tech. And this ends in a pretty easy to predict way. I just clear out all their eco, all of their creep, and then kill off their hero. So that is the strength of the Artanis build, of the aggression and the pressure you put on the Zerg, and how strong it is in the average game. Whether you need to solo or whether you need to work with your team, this is a very good way and a very consistent way of winning your games.